Dr. Marcus Chun had seen plenty of strange things during his 15 years serving aboard the medical frigate Hippocrates, but nothing quite prepared him for the sight that greeted him in the emergency bay. The alien lying on the medical table was unlike any species he had encountered in his extensive xenobiology training. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent quality that shifted between deep purple and silver, like oil on water. 6 limbs extended from her torso, 4 of which appeared to be arms with delicate, elongated fingers, while the lower 2 served as legs. Most striking were the crystalline formations that grew from her skull like a natural crown, pulsing with a soft, rhythmic light. "What do we know about her?" Marcus asked Dr. Sarah Williams, his chief medical officer, as he approached the table. The alien's breathing was shallow, and a dark fluid that he assumed was blood seeped from a wound in her upper torso. "Found her in an escape pod drifting near the Kepler station wreckage," Sarah replied, consulting her datapad. "No identification, but the pod's construction suggests advanced technology. She's been unconscious since we brought her aboard 3 hours ago. Vital signs are stable, but that wound needs immediate attention." Marcus nodded, pulling on his surgical gloves. The Kepler station attack had been devastating. Pirates had overwhelmed the remote research outpost, killing dozens of scientists and support staff. Finding a survivor, especially an alien one, was unexpected. The Hippocrates had been responding to the distress call when they discovered the escape pod. "Any attempt at communication?" he asked, examining the wound more closely. It appeared to be from some kind of energy weapon, the edges cauterized but still bleeding that strange, dark fluid. "None. She hasn't regained consciousness. I've run preliminary scans, but her physiology is completely unknown. We're operating blind here, Marcus." That was nothing new. Humanity had been exploring space for nearly 2 centuries, making contact with dozens of alien species. Some were friendly, others hostile, but most were simply indifferent to the presence of humans among the stars. The galaxy was vast, and there was room for everyone, provided they followed the basic rules of civilized conduct. Marcus began his examination, noting the alien's unusual anatomy. Her skin felt warm beneath his hands, with a texture that was almost scaled but incredibly smooth. The crystalline formations on her head pulsed faster as he worked, suggesting some kind of neurological response. Her 4 arms were positioned in a way that suggested they served different purposes, 2 appearing more delicate and precise, while the other 2 seemed built for strength. "Heart rate is elevated," Sarah reported from the monitoring station, "or whatever passes for a heart in her species. The rhythm is complex, almost like she has multiple cardiovascular systems." Marcus carefully cleaned the wound, noting how the alien's body responded to his touch. The crystalline formations brightened slightly, and her breathing deepened. "She's coming around," he murmured, preparing his instruments. "We need to work fast." The wound was deeper than it initially appeared, penetrating through several layers of tissue that served functions he could only guess at. The energy weapon had done significant damage, but it seemed her species was remarkably resilient. Despite the severity of the injury, her vital signs remained stable. As Marcus worked to seal the damaged tissue using a combination of synthetic bandages and biogel, the alien's eyes suddenly opened. They were large and multifaceted, like a jewel cut into 1,000 surfaces, each reflecting the light from the medical bay's illumination. The effect was both beautiful and unsettling. The alien's gaze fixed on Marcus immediately, her crystalline crown formations now pulsing rapidly. She attempted to speak, but only a series of melodic tones emerged, rising and falling in what was clearly an attempt at communication. "Easy," Marcus said softly, continuing his work on her wound. "You're safe. We found you near Kepler Station. You've been injured, but you're going to be all right." The alien's head tilted slightly, her multifaceted eyes studying his face with an intensity that made him slightly uncomfortable. She spoke again, the tones more urgent this time. One of her stronger arms moved slightly, as if she was trying to reach for something. "Sarah, can you run this through the linguistic database? Maybe we can find some kind of pattern or reference." "Already on it," Sarah replied, her fingers flying over her console. "The tonal patterns are complex, but there might be something in the archives." Marcus continued working, cleaning, and dressing the wound with careful precision. The alien watched every movement, her crystalline formations continuing their rapid pulsing. When he reached the deepest part of the wound, she suddenly tensed, her entire body going rigid. A sound emerged from her throat, not quite a gasp, but something more complex. "Did I hurt you?" Marcus asked, pausing in his work. The alien's eyes met his, and for a moment, he felt as if she was looking directly into his soul. There was an intelligence there that was unmistakably profound, along with something else he couldn't quite identify. The alien spoke again, her voice stronger now. The tones were different this time, more deliberate and controlled. Sarah's linguistic program chimed with a partial translation. "The computer's picking up fragments," Sarah reported. "Something about touch, and a word that might translate to forbidden or sacred. The linguistic patterns are incredibly sophisticated." Marcus resumed his work, but the alien's reaction was immediate. She tensed again, and this time she spoke a single, clear word that the computer translated instantly. "Stop." He paused, his hands still positioned over her wound. "I need to finish treating your injury," he said slowly, hoping his tone would convey his peaceful intentions. "You're hurt. Let me help you." The alien studied him for a long moment, her crystalline crown pulsing in what seemed like a thoughtful rhythm. Then she spoke again, a longer phrase this time. The computer worked to translate, parsing the complex tonal patterns. "Only bonded may touch," came the halting translation. Then another phrase, "sacred trust consort." Marcus felt a chill of understanding. In many alien cultures, physical contact was regulated by strict social protocols. He might have inadvertently violated some kind of taboo. "Sarah, pull up everything we have on touch-based social structures in known species." "Already cross-referencing," Sarah replied. "There are several species where physical contact is restricted to family members or mates. The Zalari have a similar concept, where only life-bonded pairs can touch during medical treatment." The alien continued speaking, her voice growing stronger. The translation became clearer as the computer accumulated more linguistic data. "Heel touch forbidden. Only mate consort." Marcus realized the delicate position he was in. The alien was clearly in pain, her wound still bleeding, but her cultural protocols prevented her from accepting his help. In human medicine, the doctor-patient relationship transcended most social boundaries, but clearly that wasn't universal. "I'm a doctor," he said carefully, pointing to himself, and then to his medical insignia. "Healer, I want to help you." He gestured to her wound, then to his medical instruments. "Heal. Help." The alien's multifaceted eyes followed his gestures, and she seemed to be considering his words. Her crystalline formations pulsed in a different rhythm now, slower and more contemplative. She spoke again, and this time the translation was clearer. "Healer understands but law tradition, only beloved may." She's caught between her cultural programming and her need for medical attention. Marcus said to Sarah, "We need to find a way to work within her social framework." The alien suddenly attempted to sit up, wincing as the movement aggravated her wound. Dark fluid began seeping through the preliminary dressing Marcus had applied. She spoke urgently, gesturing to herself and then to the medical bay's exit. "No," Marcus said firmly, gently pressing her back down. "You're too badly injured to leave. You could bleed to death." The alien's eyes widened at his touch, and she went completely still. Her crystalline formations stopped pulsing entirely for a moment, then began again in a rapid, almost frantic rhythm. She stared at him with an expression he couldn't read, but there was something in her gaze that suggested shock, or perhaps recognition. "Marcus," Sarah said urgently, "her neurological readings are off the charts. Whatever just happened, it triggered a massive response in her nervous system." The alien spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. The translation came through clearly this time. "You touch without permission, but I do not reject." Marcus felt the weight of what might be happening. In some species, unsolicited touch could be interpreted as either an act of aggression or an intimate gesture. He had acted purely from medical necessity, but clearly the alien's cultural framework was interpreting his actions differently. "I'm sorry if I violated your customs," he said carefully. "I only want to help you heal." The alien's gaze never left his face as she spoke again. This time her words came out slowly and deliberately. "Only consort may touch, but you have touched and I live." Sarah's voice was tense with excitement, and concern. Marcus, I think she's trying to tell us that by touching her despite her cultural prohibitions, you've created some kind of bond or obligation. In some species, accepting touch from a non-bonded individual can be interpreted as consent to bonding. Marcus felt his heart rate increase. The last thing he had intended was to create an interspecies diplomatic incident. Is there anything in our protocols about this? Nothing specific, but there are guidelines about respecting alien customs while providing medical care. The problem is, we don't know enough about her species to know what we're dealing with. The alien continued to watch Marcus, her crystalline formations now pulsing in a steady, rhythmic pattern. She reached out with one of her more delicate arms and gently touched his hand. Her skin was warm and surprisingly soft, and he felt a slight tingling sensation at the contact. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. It was still melodic, but there was a new quality to it, something that sounded almost like affection. You're gentle, healer, but custom demands touch is accepted, bond must form. She's trying to tell us about her cultural requirements, Sarah interpreted. It sounds like physical contact, especially of a healing nature, creates some kind of social obligation. Marcus looked down at the alien's hand, still touching his. Her wound was still bleeding, and she needed immediate medical attention. But, clearly, accepting his help came with consequences neither of them had anticipated. What kind of bond? He asked carefully. The alien's multifaceted eyes seemed to sparkle as she responded. The translation came through with startling clarity. Consort, life bond, you have claimed me, and I have accepted now I may touch for. I am yours and you're. The medical bay fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Marcus realized that what had begun as a simple medical procedure had somehow evolved into something much more complex. The alien was looking at him with an expression that could only be described as expectant, her crystalline crown formations pulsing in what he was beginning to recognize as a pleased or contented rhythm. Sarah, he said quietly, I think we need to contact the Xenocultural Relations Department immediately. The alien squeezed his hand gently and spoke again, her voice now warm with what sounded like humor. First he'll bondmate, then we will speak of customs and laws. Marcus realized that somehow, in trying to save her life, he had inadvertently entered into what her species considered a marriage contract. The irony wasn't lost on him that the situation had evolved from only her consort may touch her to apparently making him exactly that person. As he resumed, treating her wound, now apparently with her full permission and approval, Marcus couldn't help but wonder what other surprises this remarkable alien had in store for him. Her species was clearly highly intelligent and possessed sophisticated cultural frameworks. If he was going to navigate this unexpected situation, he would need to learn everything he could about her people and their customs. The alien watched him work with obvious satisfaction, occasionally offering what sounded like words of encouragement or approval. Despite the surreal nature of the situation, Marcus found himself oddly comforted by her presence. There was something calming about her demeanor, and her trust in him, despite their cultural complications, was both humbling and inspiring. Whatever challenges lay ahead, one thing was certain. His life had just become infinitely more complicated and interesting. 3 hours later, Marcus found himself in the most unusual diplomatic meeting of his career. The alien, who had introduced herself as Zarathul of the Vethran Dominion, sat across from him in the ship's conference room. Her wound was properly treated and healing remarkably fast, thanks to what appeared to be an accelerated regenerative ability. Captain Elena Rodriguez sat at the head of the table, flanked by the ship's xenocultural specialist, Dr. James Wright, and communications officer Lieutenant Torres. The translation system had improved dramatically with more linguistic data from Zarathul, though her accent gave the common words an exotic, musical quality. She had also demonstrated a remarkable ability to learn human speech patterns, picking up basic English phrases with startling speed. Let me see if I understand this correctly, Captain Rodriguez said, reviewing the notes on her datapad. Dr. Chen's medical treatment of your injuries has, according to your cultural laws, established what your species considers a life bond. Zarathul's crystalline crown formations pulsed in what they had learned was an affirmative pattern. Yes, Captain Rodriguez. In Vethran culture, to touch another during their time of vulnerability, especially with healing intent, creates sacred bond. When I accepted his touch without resistance, the bond became complete. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. And this bond is permanent until death claims one or both. Zarathul replied matter-of-factly, her multifaceted eyes studying his face. But it is not burden, Marcus Chun. It is honor. You saved my life when custom forbade any but my chosen mate to touch me. By accepting your touch, I chose you as that mate. Dr. Wright leaned forward, his anthropological training clearly fascinated by the cultural implications. This suggests your species has evolved specific neurological and social responses to physical contact. It's actually quite elegant from an evolutionary standpoint. Our people are few, Zarathul explained, her voice taking on a more formal tone. We cannot afford casual physical bonding. Each touch, each bond, must have meaning and purpose. It ensures our bloodlines remain strong and our societies stable. Captain Rodriguez frowned. This presents us with a significant diplomatic challenge. Dr. Chun acted in accordance with his medical oath and training. We can't simply ignore that, but we also can't disregard your cultural requirements. There is no challenge, Captain, Zarathul said, her crown formations pulsing brighter. The bond has been made according to our law. Marcus Chun is now my consort, and I am his. This brings great honor to both our peoples. Wait, Marcus interjected, feeling increasingly overwhelmed. I appreciate the honor, but I never consented to marriage. In human culture, both parties must agree to such a bond. Zarathul tilted her head in that curious way he was beginning to recognize. But you did consent, Marcus Chun. When you touched me despite my words of prohibition, when you continued your healing work despite my cultural warnings, you declared your intent to claim me. When I did not resist, did not strike you down or call for aid, I accepted your claim. I was trying to save your life. And in doing so, you chose to bind your life to mine. It is, how do you humans say, romantic? The last word came out in careful English, and Marcus could swear there was amusement in her tone. Lieutenant Torres, who had been quietly monitoring communications, suddenly looked up from her console. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from the veteran ship Stellar Harmony. They're requesting immediate communication with Her Imperial Majesty. The room fell silent. Zarathul's crown formations dimmed noticeably, and for the first time since he had met her, she looked genuinely uncomfortable. Imperial Majesty. Captain Rodriguez asked slowly. Zarathul sighed, a sound that was both human-like and completely alien. I had hoped to avoid this complication for a while longer. Yes, Captain Rodriguez. I am Queen Zarathul, ruler of the Veteran Dominion. The escape pod you found was my personal vessel. Marcus felt the bottom drop out of his stomach. You're a queen? I am. And, according to the laws of my people, you are now my royal consort. Congratulations, Marcus Chun. You have just become one of the most powerful beings in this sector of the galaxy. Dr. Wright's academic excitement was palpable. This is extraordinary. A human-veteran royal marriage could have massive implications for interspecies relations. The Veteran Dominion controls 17 star systems and maintains defensive pacts with dozens of other species. Put the veteran ship through, Captain Rodriguez ordered, though her expression suggested she was rapidly calculating the political ramifications. The main screen flickered to life, revealing another veteran, this one male with broader shoulders and more pronounced crystalline formations. His demeanor was immediately formal and somewhat stern. Your Majesty, he said in accented but clear English, I am Admiral Thanedoke of the Royal Fleet. We have been searching for you since the attack on Kepler Station. Are you unharmed? I am well, Admiral, Zarathul replied, her posture straightening into what Marcus now recognized as royal bearing. Thanks to the intervention of the human medical vessel Hippocrates and their chief medical officer, the Admiral's multifaceted eyes fixed on Marcus, and the scrutiny was decidedly uncomfortable. You are the human who treated Her Majesty's wounds. I am, Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Then, you understand the significance of your actions? The bonds you have created. Before Marcus could answer, Zarathul spoke up firmly. Admiral Thanedoke, Dr. Marcus Chun is now my bonded consort according to our laws. You will treat him with the respect due to his station. The Admiral's crown formations pulsed in what looked like surprise. Your Majesty, surely you cannot be serious. A human? An alien? The Council of Noble Houses will be displeased. The Council of Noble Houses will accept my choice, as they have for the past century of my reign, Zarathul said coolly. Dr. Chun saved my life at great personal risk, accepting the bonds of our customs without hesitation. He has proven himself worthy. Marcus wanted to point out that he hadn't exactly been given a choice in the matter, but the political undercurrents in the conversation suggested that might not be the wisest course of action. Admiral Thaindok seemed to struggle with the situation for a moment before nodding grudgingly. As your majesty wishes. However, I must insist that you return to the fleet immediately. The attack on Kepler Station was not random piracy. It was a coordinated assault by the hegemony. They knew you were there. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Marcus had heard of the hegemony, a militaristic confederation of species that sought to dominate this region of the galaxy through force and intimidation. If they were specifically targeting Zarathul, the implications were serious. How did they know? Captain Rodriguez asked. We believe there is a spy within the noble houses, the admiral replied grimly. Someone with access to your majesty's travel schedules. The attack on the research station was a trap. Zarathul's crown formations pulsed rapidly, and Marcus noticed her hands clenching into fists. How many died? 47 researchers and support staff, all human. Your majesty's presence at the station was supposed to be confidential, but the hegemony forces arrived within hours of your shuttle landing. Marcus felt a chill of horror. Dozens of people had died because someone had leaked information about Zarathul's visit to the research station. The fact that they were all human made it even more disturbing. This changes things, Captain Rodriguez said quietly. If the hegemony is willing to attack civilian research facilities to get to Queen Zarathul, nowhere is safe. Which is why your majesty must return to the fleet immediately, Admiral Thaindok urged. The Royal Guard can provide proper protection. Zarathul looked thoughtful, her gaze moving between Marcus and the Admiral. Admiral, what is the current status of our alliance negotiations with the Terran Federation? Stalled, your majesty. The Federation Council has concerns about our technological superiority and questions about our long-term intentions. There are those among the human leadership who view us as a potential threat rather than a potential ally. Marcus saw where this conversation was heading, and he didn't like it. You're thinking of using our situation as a diplomatic tool. Zarathul turned to him with an expression that was both apologetic and determined. Our bonding is legitimate according to my people's laws, Marcus Chun. But, yes, it could serve as a powerful symbol of cooperation between our species. A human consort in the Vethran royal house would demonstrate our commitment to peaceful coexistence. And if I refuse? The room fell silent again. Zarathul studied his face carefully before answering. According to our law, you cannot refuse. The bond has been made, but I would not force you to remain at my side if your heart is truly unwilling. What would happen to you if I left? I would be considered and bonded again, free to choose another consort. But she paused, her crown formations dimming. Breaking a bond once made is difficult. It would be seen as a sign of weakness, both personal and political. Dr. Wright leaned forward again. Your Majesty, could you explain the neurobiological aspects of this bonding? Is there an actual physiological component, or is it purely cultural? Zarathul's expression brightened slightly. It is both, Dr. Wright. The crystalline formations you see on our skulls are partially neural in nature. They respond to emotional and physical stimuli, especially those related to bonding and attachment. While I accepted Marcus Chen's touch, my neural crystals attuned themselves to his bioelectric field. We are now, in a very real sense, neurologically compatible. Meaning what, exactly? Marcus asked, though he had a feeling he wasn't going to like the answer. Meaning we can sense each other's emotional states to some degree. Meaning separation would be uncomfortable. Meaning our lifespans will now synchronize. She paused, watching his expression, and meaning we will be able to share thoughts and memories if we choose to deepen the bond. Marcus felt like he was drowning in implications. A xenobiological marriage that included telepathic bonding, political ramifications across multiple star systems, and the immediate threat of assassination by hostile alien forces. 3 hours ago, his biggest concern had been whether the coffee in the galley was fresh. How long do Vethrans live? He asked weakly. Approximately 8 of your centuries, though bonded pairs often live longer due to the shared life force. 800 years. Marcus put his head in his hands. This is insane. Captain Rodriguez looked like she was developing a headache. Admiral Thaindok, what kind of protection can you provide for Dr. Chun? If he's now considered veteran royalty, he's presumably a target as well. The Royal Guard is the finest military force in this sector, Captain. But, I confess, protecting a human will present unique challenges. Your species has particular vulnerabilities, such as you require specific atmospheric conditions, dietary requirements, and you are far more fragile than veterans. Additionally, your shorter natural lifespan means standard royal security protocols may not apply. Zarathul stood suddenly, her crown formations pulsing with determination. Admiral, prepare quarters aboard your flagship for my consort. Captain Rodriguez, I formally request that Dr. Chun be temporarily reassigned to serve as cultural liaison between our peoples. Your Majesty, Marcus began, but she held up a hand. Marcus Chun, I understand this situation is overwhelming. I did not plan for it any more than you did. But the bond between us is real, and the political situation requires immediate action. The hegemony will not stop with one attack. They seek to destabilize this entire region, and our alliance is the only thing standing in their way. She moved closer to him, and he noticed again how her presence seemed to affect his mood. There was something calming about being near her, as if her crystalline formations were somehow harmonizing with his own neural activity. I'm asking you to trust me, she continued. Give me time to explain our customs, our culture, our situation. If, after you understand what our bonding truly means, you still wish to leave, I will find a way to release you from our obligations. Marcus looked around the room at the faces watching him. Captain Rodriguez wore an expression of barely controlled concern. Dr. Wright looked like he was witnessing the discovery of the century. Lieutenant Torres seemed fascinated by the communications technology implications. And Zarathul, despite her alien features and the impossibility of the situation, there was something in her multifaceted eyes that reminded him why he had become a doctor in the first place. The desire to help, to heal, to make things better. All right, he said finally, but I want regular communication with my colleagues, and I want a full briefing on exactly what I'm getting into. Zarathul's crown formations brightened considerably. Of course, my consort. You will find that being bonded to a veteran queen has certain advantages. As Marcus prepared to transfer to an alien flagship with a xenobiological wife he had acquired by accident, he couldn't help but think that his medical career had taken a very unexpected turn. But, looking at Zarathul's pleased expression and feeling the strange sense of rightness that came with being near her, he was beginning to think it might not be entirely unwelcome. The next few weeks were going to be very interesting indeed. The stellar harmony was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The veteran flagship stretched nearly 2 kilometers in length, its hull composed of the same crystalline material that formed the crown formations on veteran skulls. The ship seemed to pulse with organic light, creating patterns that flowed along its surface like living neural networks. As their shuttle approached the docking bay, Marcus felt a strange, tingling sensation, as if the ship itself was aware of his presence. First time aboard a bio-integrated vessel? Zarathul asked, noticing his amazement. She had changed into what appeared to be formal royal attire, flowing robes that seemed to be woven from liquid starlight, with crystalline ornaments that complemented her crown formations. Bio-integrated? Marcus asked, watching the docking bay door's iris open like a living organism. Our ships are grown, not built, she explained. They are living entities that form symbiotic relationships with their crews. The Stellar Harmony has been my flagship for 60 years. She knows me as well as any friend. As they disembarked, Marcus was greeted by a full honor guard of veteran warriors. They were taller and broader than Zarathul, with more pronounced crystalline formations and what appeared to be natural armor plating along their arms and torso. Each carried weapons that hummed with energy, and their crown formations pulsed in synchronized patterns that Marcus was beginning to understand indicated respect and formal acknowledgement. Admiral Thaindok stepped forward as they entered the ship proper. Your Majesty, your quarters have been prepared. As for your consort, we have adapted the guest diplomatic suite to accommodate human environmental needs. He will stay in my quarters, Zarathul said firmly, as is appropriate for a bonded pair. The Admiral's crown formations flickered in what Marcus had learned was the equivalent of raised eyebrows. Your Majesty, that would be highly irregular. The royal quarters have never housed a non-veteran. Then, it is time for tradition to evolve, Admiral. My consort's place is at my side. As they walked through the corridors of the ship, Marcus marveled at the architecture. Everything was curved and organic, with no sharp angles or harsh lines. The walls themselves provided illumination, pulsing gently in rhythm with what he assumed was the ship's life signs. Crew members they passed performed respectful bows, but Marcus noticed the curious looks directed at him, some respectful, others clearly skeptical. "They're not sure what to make of me," Marcus observed. "Change is never easy," Zarathul replied diplomatically. "But they will learn to respect you as I do. Your actions have already begun to create ripples throughout our society." "What kind of ripples?" "News of our bonding has reached the noble houses. Some see it as an opportunity to strengthen ties with humanity. Others view it as a dilution of veteran purity. The debate has become quite heated." They entered what Marcus assumed were the royal quarters, and his breath caught. The space was vast and beautiful, with walls that seemed to be made of living crystal. The illumination was soft and naturally rhythmic, and the air carried a faint, pleasant scent that reminded him of rain on summer grass. Furniture appeared to be grown rather than crafted, perfectly formed to accommodate veteran physiology. "The ship has been adapting your environment since we docked," Zarathul explained, noting his examination of the space. "Atmospheric composition, gravity, temperature, all adjusted for your comfort." She is eager to please her new passenger. "The ship is sentient, semi-sentient. She responds to our needs and emotions, but doesn't possess true consciousness. Think of her as a very sophisticated symbiotic organism." Zarathul moved to what appeared to be a control panel, though it looked more like a musical instrument than any technology Marcus recognized. "I thought we might begin your education about our people with some historical context." The walls around them suddenly came alive with images and sounds. Marcus found himself standing in what appeared to be the middle of a vast alien city, watching veteran society as it had existed centuries ago. The images were so realistic he felt he could reach out and touch the buildings around them. "This is how our world appeared before we achieved spaceflight," Zarathul narrated. "We were a fragmented species, dozens of kingdoms constantly at war. Our bonding rituals developed as a way to forge alliances between hostile clans." Marcus watched fascination as the historical recreation showed elaborate ceremonies where representatives from different veteran groups would undergo the touching ritual he had inadvertently participated in. The neurological synchronization he was experiencing seemed to allow him to understand the emotional context of what he was seeing. Physical touch became sacred because it was the only way to guarantee trust, Zarathul continued. "When two veterans bond, they can sense each other's emotional states, making deception nearly impossible. It revolutionized our diplomatic relations. But it also meant your population growth was carefully controlled," Marcus realized. "Exactly. Every bond was significant. Every pairing had to serve both personal and political purposes. Over time, it shaped our entire social structure." The images shifted to show veteran space exploration, the colonization of other worlds, first contact with alien species. "How does bonding with a human change things?" Marcus asked. "That is what we are about to discover," Zarathul replied with a smile that was both beautiful and slightly concerning. A soft chime filled the air, and Admiral Thaindok's voice followed. "Your Majesty, Lord Kethvar of House Crystalline requests immediate audience. He insists the matter is urgent." Zarathul's crown formations dimmed slightly. "Send him in, Admiral, and prepare the formal reception protocols." The doors dilated to admit a veteran unlike any Marcus had yet seen. Lord Kethvar was ancient, his crystalline formations so developed they formed elaborate spiraling towers from his skull. His skin had a translucent quality that suggested great age, and when he moved, it was with the careful precision of someone whose every gesture carried weight. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that made Marcus's bones vibrate. "I see the rumors are true. You have indeed bonded with an alien. Lord Kethvar, may I present Dr. Marcus Chun, my consort." Marcus, Lord Kethvar, is the eldest member of the noble houses and keeper of our most ancient traditions. The ancient veteran studied Marcus with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom and judgment. "Dr. Chun, Your actions have created significant disruption among our people. That wasn't my intention, Marcus replied carefully. I was simply providing medical assistance. Yet you continued your treatment despite Her Majesty's warnings about her customs. That suggests either remarkable ignorance or remarkable courage. Lord Kethvar moved closer, and Marcus could feel some kind of energy emanating from the elder's crystalline formations. Which was it human? Marcus felt Zarathul's hand brush his arm, and through their bond, he sensed her encouragement and support. A little of both, I think. But primarily, it was my duty as a doctor. I couldn't let someone die simply because I didn't understand their customs. Interesting. Lord Kethvar circled them slowly, his ancient gaze never leaving Marcus's face. And now that you do understand our customs, now that you know what your actions have bound you to. I'm still learning, Marcus admitted, but I won't abandon my responsibilities. To Her Majesty, or to your medical oath? To both. Lord Kethvar's crown formations pulsed in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as approval. Good answer. But your trial is far from over, young consort. The noble houses are in emergency session. Some call for the bonding to be declared invalid due to your alien nature. Others see opportunity in an alliance with humanity. And you? Zarathul asked. I see potential, the elder replied thoughtfully. Your species has qualities that could complement our own, Dr. Chun. Your medical knowledge, your adaptability, He paused, studying Marcus intently. Your remarkable capacity for self-sacrifice in service of others. These are traits we value. But, Marcus sensed there was more. But, tradition runs deep in our people. Many will not easily accept an alien in our royal house. You will need to prove yourself worthy of the position you have accidentally acquired. Ow! Lord Kethvar's expression took on what Marcus was learning to recognize as veteran amusement. By surviving the trials of consortship, of course. Ancient law requires that any who would bond with royalty must demonstrate their worthiness through ritual challenges. Zarathul's crown formations flickered with what looked like concern. Lord Kethvar, the trials have not been invoked in over 2 centuries. The risks are significant, yes, the elder agreed. But the law is clear. If Dr. Chen wishes to be accepted as your legitimate consort, he must undergo the traditional trials. If he succeeds, no member of the noble houses can question his worthiness. If he fails, what happens if I fail? Marcus asked, though he had a feeling he didn't want to know. Failure in the trials typically results in death, Lord Kethvar said matter-of-factly. But you are human, so accommodations would need to be made. Perhaps exile would be more appropriate. That's reassuring, Marcus muttered. Zarathul stepped closer to him, and through their bond, he felt her determination and fierce protectiveness. What do the trials involve? 3 challenges, Lord Kethvar explained. The trial of wisdom, where the candidate must demonstrate understanding of veteran culture and law. The trial of strength, where they must prove their ability to protect their bonded mate. And the trial of unity, where the true depth of the bond is tested. And if I refuse to participate, then your bonding to Her Majesty would be considered incomplete under our law. She would be free to choose another, but she would also be seen as having made a poor initial choice. The political implications would be significant. Marcus looked at Zarathul, noting the tension in her posture and the rapid pulsing of her crown formations. Through their growing bond, he could sense her fear, not for herself, but for him. She was genuinely worried about what the trials might do to him. When would these trials take place? He asked. Traditionally, within 7 solar cycles of the bonding declaration. However, given the unique circumstances, the noble houses have agreed to allow you 30 cycles to prepare. 30 days, Marcus calculated, to learn enough about your culture to pass tests that presumably take veterans years to prepare for. The challenges will be adapted for your alien physiology and knowledge base, Lord Kethvar assured him. But the fundamental requirements remain the same. You must prove yourself worthy of the position you have claimed. After Lord Kethvar left, Marcus sat heavily on what appeared to be a crystalline chair that somehow molded itself to his human form. The weight of his situation was finally beginning to sink in. He was bonded to an alien queen, living aboard a sentient starship, preparing for ritual trials that could result in his death or exile. This is insane, he said aloud. Zarathul settled beside him, her presence immediately calming his racing thoughts. I'm sorry, Marcus. I never intended for you to face such challenges. It's not your fault. I made the choice to treat your wounds despite your warnings. I just never imagined it would lead to this. Do you regret it? She asked quietly. Marcus considered the question carefully. The logical answer was yes. He had inadvertently gotten himself involved in interstellar politics and alien culture wars that could easily get him killed. But as he looked at Zarathul, felt the gentle connection between their minds, and remembered the satisfaction of healing her wounds, he found himself uncertain. Ask me again after I survive the trials, he said finally. Zarathul's crown formations brightened with what he was learning to recognize as affection. Then, we had better begin your preparation immediately. 30 days is not very long to learn the wisdom of centuries. Where do we start? With understanding what you have truly become, my dear consort. The bonding between us is more profound than you yet realize. And if we were to face the trials together, you need to understand the full extent of what we now share. As Zarathul began to explain the deeper aspects of veteran bonding, Marcus realized that his journey from simple ship's doctor to alien royalty was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The real question was whether he would survive long enough to see where it led. 25 days into his preparation for the trials, Marcus was beginning to understand why veteran society had remained stable for millennia. Their culture was incredibly complex with layers of tradition, law, and social protocol that had evolved over thousands of years. What amazed him most was how much of it made perfect sense once he understood the underlying principles. The key is the neural synchronization, Zarathul explained as they sat in what she called the memory garden, a section of the ship where the walls could replay historical events with perfect clarity. When veterans bond, we don't just share emotional states. We can share knowledge, experience, even memories. Marcus had been experiencing glimpses of this for weeks now. Sometimes, when they were close, he would suddenly know things he had never learned, veteran words, cultural concepts, even technical knowledge about their technology. It was disorienting, but undeniably useful. Is that how I'm going to pass the trial of wisdom? He asked. By accessing your memories? Partially, but the trials test more than just knowledge. They test character, adaptability, and the strength of our bond itself. Zaratules croit une formation post toute folie. The trial of wisdom will require you to solve problems using veteran principles, not just recite facts. They had spent hours each day studying together, and Marcus was beginning to appreciate the elegant complexity of veteran law and philosophy. Their entire social structure was based on the principle of mutual responsibility, the idea that every individual's actions affected the well-being of the whole society. Tell me about the trial of strength again, Marcus said, reviewing his notes on a datapad that had been specially modified for human use. It is not about physical prowess, Zarathul clarified. It tests your ability to protect what you value. Traditionally, candidates face scenarios where they must choose between personal safety and the welfare of others. The trial adapts to test what matters most to the individual. And the trial of unity? Zarathul's expression became more serious. That is the most difficult to explain. It requires complete trust between bonded partners. We will be tested together, and our success will depend on how well we can synchronize not just our thoughts, but our very beings. A soft chime interrupted their study session. Your Majesty, came Admiral Thaindok's voice. We have an urgent communication from the Border Patrol. The hegemony fleet has been detected moving toward veteran space. They hurried to the bridge, where the main display showed a tactical overview of the surrounding star systems. Marcus had learned to read veteran tactical displays over the past few weeks, and what he saw was concerning. A massive force of hegemony warships was positioned at the edge of veteran territory. Fleet composition analysis, Zarathul ordered. 200 vessels minimum, Your Majesty. Heavy cruisers, battleships, and what appears to be a new class of dreadnought we haven't seen before. The tactical officers' crown formations were pulsing rapidly with stress. Their course suggests they're targeting our industrial worlds. Time to intercept if they maintain current speed? 14 cycles, Your Majesty. But our intelligence suggests this is a feint. The real target is likely the capital world. Marcus watched the display with growing concern. His medical training had taught him to recognize patterns, and the hegemony's movements suggested a coordinated strategy designed to divide veteran forces. Admiral, he said quietly, may I see the tactical history of their previous engagements? Feindok looked to Zarathul, who nodded permission. The display shifted to show data from recent battles between the hegemony and various species. Marcus studied the patterns, noting how the enemy forces operated. "They're using medical tactics," he said suddenly. "Explain," Zarathul requested. "In medicine, when treating a systemic infection, you sometimes create a secondary crisis to draw the body's immune response away from the primary site. The hegemony is doing the same thing, creating multiple threats to force you to divide your fleet." Admiral Feindok's crown formations flickered with interest. "You're suggesting the industrial worlds are a distraction? Look at their ship positioning. They're close enough to threaten your colonies, but not close enough to attack immediately. They want you to split your forces to defend multiple targets. Meanwhile, their real assault force is probably already en route to your capital using a different approach vector." Zarathul moved to the tactical station and began inputting commands. "Show me all detected ship movements in the past 30 cycles, including civilian traffic." The display revealed a complex web of ship movements throughout the region. Marcus studied it carefully, his pattern recognition skills honed by years of medical diagnosis. "There," he said, pointing to a series of apparently unrelated cargo vessel movements. "Those aren't random commercial flights. The spacing is too regular, the routes too coordinated. I think those are hegemony ships disguised as civilian traffic, heading directly for the capital system," Admiral Feindok realized. "By the ancestors, you may be right." Zarathul was already issuing orders. "Signal the fleet commanders. Maintain token forces to monitor the border situation, but redirect the main battle groups to intercept the stealth assault. And send a priority message to the Terran Federation. If this attack succeeds, they'll be the hegemony's next target." As the bridge crew worked to implement the new strategy, Zarathul turned to Marcus with an expression of approval and, something else, pride. "You may have just saved millions of lives," she said softly. "Just pattern recognition." Marcus replied, though he felt a warm glow of satisfaction. "Same skills I use in medical diagnosis, just applied to a different problem." "That is precisely the kind of thinking the trial of wisdom will test," she told him. "The ability to see beyond surface appearances and understand underlying structures." Over the next few hours, as the Vethran fleet repositioned according to Marcus's analysis, he began to understand something important about his role in this alien society. His human perspective allowed him to see things that Vethrans, despite their advanced civilization, might miss. His medical training gave him analytical tools that were different from, but complementary to, their own approaches. "Admiral," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving confirmation from our scout ships. The suspected cargo vessels are indeed hegemony warships. The lead elements are already entering the outer system." "Battle stations," Admiral Feindok ordered. "Signal all ships to prepare for engagement." As the Stellar Harmony prepared for combat, Marcus found himself in an unexpected position. As the Queen's consort, he had a place on the bridge during combat operations, but he was also the ship's only human crew member. "Your Majesty," Admiral Feindok said during a brief lull in preparations, "might I suggest that Dr. Chun observe the engagement from the secure command center? His safety is paramount." "No," Marcus said before Zarathul could respond. "If I'm going to be a part of this society, I need to understand all aspects of it, including how you defend yourselves." "The bridge of a warship during combat is no place for a medical professional," the Admiral protested. "Actually, it's exactly where a medical professional should be," Marcus countered. "If your crew is injured during the battle, I'm the only one aboard with cross-species medical training." Zarathul's crown formations brightened with approval. "Dr. Chun makes a valid point, Admiral. His medical expertise could be crucial if we sustain casualties." The first exchange of fire came as the hegemony fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the capital world. The enemy had indeed been using civilian ship disguises to get close to their target, just as Marcus had predicted. But thanks to early warning, the Vethran defense fleet was waiting for them. The battle was unlike anything Marcus had ever imagined. Vethran weapons created cascading energy patterns that looked more like art than warfare, while their ships moved with organic grace that spoke to their bio-integrated nature. The hegemony vessels, by contrast, were purely mechanical, their weapons creating harsh, angular energy beams. "Medical emergency on Deck 7, came an announcement over the ship's communication system. Multiple casualties from an energy feedback surge. Marcus was moving before anyone could object. Where's the medical bay? I'll show you, Zarathul said, following him from the bridge. The injured veterans had been caught in an overload of one of the ship's bioneural networks. Their crown formations were flickering erratically, and several were unconscious. Marcus immediately began triage, applying the xenobiological knowledge he had gained over the past month. The neural disruption is interfering with their autonomic functions, he explained as he worked. We need to stabilize their crown formations to restore normal brain activity. Working alongside veteran medical technicians, Marcus found himself using techniques that combined human medical knowledge with veteran biology. His understanding of their neural crystalline structures, gained through his bond with Zarathul, allowed him to treat conditions that would have been impossible to diagnose just a month earlier. How did you know to modulate the neural resonance at that frequency? One of the technicians asked as they stabilized the last patient. The crown formations pulse in harmony with brain activity, Marcus explained. By watching the pattern disruption, I could estimate the interference frequency and calculate a counter-resonance. Remarkable, the technician said. Your approach is completely different from our traditional methods, but it's more effective for this type of injury. As they returned to the bridge, the battle was winding down. The hegemony forces, caught by surprise and outnumbered by the repositioned veteran fleet, were retreating. But Marcus could see from the tactical display that this was only the beginning of a larger conflict. They were testing our responses, Admiral Thaindok reported to Zarathul. This was a probing attack, designed to gather intelligence on our defensive capabilities. Which means they'll be back, Marcus observed. Probably with different tactics next time. Indeed, Zarathul agreed. The hegemony is persistent if nothing else. But today's victory is significant. Your strategic insight may have prevented a successful surprise attack on our capital. Your Majesty, Lord Kethvar's voice came over the communication system. I have been observing the human's performance during the crisis. His actions today speak well of his character and capabilities. Thank you, Lord Kethvar, Marcus replied, though I was just doing what needed to be done. Precisely, the elder responded. And that, young consort, is exactly the quality the trials are designed to test. Your instinctive response to crisis, your willingness to risk yourself for others, your ability to see solutions where others see only problems. These are the traits of a worthy royal partner. As they returned to their quarters that evening, Marcus reflected on the day's events. He had helped predict and counter an enemy attack, treated wounded crew members using hybrid medical techniques, and earned the approval of the most tradition-bound member of veteran nobility. The trials begin tomorrow, Zarathul reminded him as they settled in for the evening. I know, Marcus said, feeling surprisingly calm about the prospect. But after today, I think I'm beginning to understand what they're really testing. And what is that? Marcus considered his answer carefully. Not whether I can become veteran, but whether I can bring the best of humanity to your people while respecting and learning from your traditions. Zarathul's crown formations pulsed with warmth and affection. You are wiser than you know, my dear consort. Tomorrow will determine whether the noble houses agree. As Marcus prepared for sleep in an alien bed aboard a living starship, bonded to a queen of a species he had never heard of a month ago, he realized that he was no longer afraid of the trials. Whatever challenges they presented, he would face them as he had always faced challenges, with determination, compassion, and the knowledge that sometimes the best solutions came from thinking differently than everyone else expected. The trials would either confirm his place in this remarkable civilization or send him back to his old life. Either way, he was ready to find out which future awaited him. The trial chamber was a marvel of veteran architecture, a vast crystalline amphitheater that had grown from the living rock of their homeworld centuries ago. The walls themselves recorded and replayed the trials of countless royal consorts throughout history, their surfaces shimmering with stored memories and ancient wisdom. Marcus stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the 12 members of the noble houses who would judge his worthiness. Lord Kethvar's voice resonated through the chamber with ceremonial gravity. Dr. Marcus Chun of the Terran species, you have claimed bonding with Her Majesty Queen Zarathul through ancient rite of healing touch. Do you now seek to prove your worthiness to stand as royal consort? I do, Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Then, let the trials begin. First, the trial of wisdom. The chamber around them transformed, the crystalline walls shifting to display a complex scenario. Marcus found himself looking at what appeared to be a detailed simulation of a Vethran colony world facing multiple crises. The colony of Nexus Prime has been struck by a cascade of disasters, Lord Kethvar explained. Seismic activity has damaged their primary life support systems. A plague is spreading through the population, and enemy forces are approaching with hostile intent. As Royal Consort, you have been given authority to resolve the crisis. You may save only one of 3 critical resources. Choose wisely. The simulation showed 3 options: medical supplies that could halt the plague but would take days to distribute, engineering equipment that could repair the life support systems immediately but wouldn't address the disease, or military reinforcements that could repel the enemy but would arrive too late to prevent massive casualties from the other crises. Marcus studied the scenario carefully, applying the analytical skills that had served him throughout his medical career. After several minutes of consideration, he made his choice. "I choose none of the 3 options presented," he announced. A murmur of surprise rippled through the assembled nobles. "Explain your reasoning," Lord Kethvar demanded. "The scenario is designed to test whether I understand Vethran principles of resource allocation under crisis conditions. But the premise is flawed. In Vethran society, the 3 crises aren't separate problems. They're symptoms of a larger system failure." Marcus pointed to the simulation. "The enemy attack is timed to coincide with the natural disasters. That suggests coordination, not coincidence. The plague outbreak started in the sectors where seismic damage was worst, suggesting it's not a natural disease, but a biological weapon deployed to capitalize on the infrastructure damage." He continued his analysis. "Instead of treating these as 3 separate problems requiring 3 separate solutions, I would focus on identifying and eliminating the source of the coordinated attack. The enemy forces approaching aren't just military. They're biological warfare specialists who triggered the seismic activity to create optimal conditions for their plague weapon." The simulation shifted to reflect his reasoning, revealing hidden enemy infiltrators and concealed weapon systems that matched his analysis perfectly. "By focusing on the root cause rather than the symptoms, we can neutralize the biological weapon, expose the enemy agents, and coordinate with approaching friendly forces to repel the attack," Marcus concluded. "The colony's own resources can then be used to repair the infrastructure damage." Lord Kethvar's crown formations pulsed with what Marcus had learned to recognize as impressed approval. "Your reasoning demonstrates understanding of our core principle. Address the source of disorder, not merely its effects." The trial of wisdom is past. The chamber transformed again, this time creating what appeared to be a combat training facility. "Now, the trial of strength," Lord Kethvar announced. Marcus expected to face some kind of physical challenge, but instead found himself confronting a different kind of test entirely. The simulation presented him with a scenario where Zarathul was in immediate danger, surrounded by enemies, while simultaneously showing him that civilians under his protection were also under attack. He could save one or the other, but not both. "Choose," the simulation commanded. "Save your bonded mate, or save the innocents under your protection." Marcus felt his heart rate spike as the scenario played out in real time. Every instinct screamed at him to save Zarathul, but his medical oath and fundamental beliefs demanded he prioritize the larger number of innocent lives. Then, he noticed something in the simulation that others might have missed. Subtle variations in the enemy attack patterns that suggested this was another coordinated assault designed to force exactly this kind of impossible choice. "This is the same pattern as in the first trial," he realized aloud. Force a choice between limited options when the real solution lies in changing the parameters of the problem itself. Instead of choosing between the 2 rescue scenarios, Marcus began analyzing the tactical situation for alternative approaches. Using his growing understanding of Vethran technology and his own human perspective on problem solving, he identified a weakness in the enemy coordination. "The attackers are using our emotional bonds against us," he explained as he worked. "They know Vethrans will prioritize bonded mates over strangers, so they've designed this attack to exploit that psychological vulnerability." Working with the simulation's tactical systems, Marcus developed a coordinated response that used the enemy's expectations against them. By appearing to choose Zarathul's rescue, he could draw the attackers into a trap that would allow both rescue operations to succeed. "Strength isn't just about physical power or even moral courage," he said as the simulation showed his strategy succeeding. "It's about the wisdom to find solutions that refuse to accept artificial limitations." The trial of strength is past, Lord Kethvar announced, his ancient voice carrying a note of something that might have been pride. The final transformation brought Zarathul herself into the chamber. This was the trial of unity, and Marcus knew from their preparation that it would test the depth and authenticity of their bond. Royal consorts must be true partners, Lord Kethvar explained. Their thoughts, intentions, and fundamental nature must be in harmony with their bonded mate. This trial cannot be passed through cleverness or analysis. It requires absolute truth between bonded souls. Zarathul approached Marcus in the center of the chamber, her crown formations beginning to pulse in the deep, rhythmic pattern he had learned indicated preparation for neural synchronization. "Are you ready, my dear Marcus?" He nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure what he was agreeing to. As Zarathul reached out and touched his face with her delicate hands, Marcus felt their bond deepen beyond anything he had experienced before. Suddenly, he wasn't just Marcus Chun anymore. He was also Zarathul, experiencing her memories, her emotions, her centuries of life and responsibility. He felt her deep love for her people, her loneliness in leadership, her fears about the future, and her growing affection for the strange human who had stumbled into her life. But the connection worked both ways. Through their bond, Zarathul experienced his memories, his childhood on Earth, his medical training, the satisfaction of healing others, the weight of responsibility he felt for every patient. She felt his initial confusion and fear at their bonding, but also his growing appreciation for her culture and his deepening care for her as an individual. The trial required them to demonstrate perfect synchronization, to show that they could function as a single entity while retaining their individual identities. Complex challenges appeared around them, puzzles that required both human and Vethran perspectives to solve, decisions that needed both emotional intuition and logical analysis. Working together through their neurally synchronized bond, Marcus and Zarathul addressed each challenge as it appeared. When human creativity was needed, Marcus took the lead while Zarathul provided support and context. When Vethran cultural knowledge was required, their roles reversed seamlessly. The most difficult moment came when the trial presented them with a scenario that forced them to choose between Marcus's loyalty to humanity and his obligations to the Vethran throne. For a moment, the synchronization wavered as they confronted the fundamental tension in their relationship. But then Marcus realized something crucial. "The choice isn't between my humanity and my bond to you," he said, his thoughts flowing directly into her mind. "My humanity is exactly what makes me valuable as your consort, and your Vethran nature is what I've come to love about you. We don't have to choose between our natures," Zarathul added, her understanding flowing through their bond. "We can be bridges between our peoples while remaining true to ourselves." The synchronization strengthened, becoming deeper and more natural than ever before. They were no longer human and Vethran trying to understand each other. They were partners whose different perspectives created something greater than the sum of their parts. "The trial of unity is past," Lord Kethvar announced, his voice carrying unmistakable satisfaction. "The bond between you is genuine and profound. Dr. Marcus Chun, you have proven yourself worthy to stand as royal consort to Her Majesty Queen Zarathul." As the trials concluded and the formal ceremonies began, Marcus reflected on how much had changed since that day in the medical bay when he had simply tried to save an injured patient. He had gained not just a wife and a new position, but an entirely new understanding of what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of diverse species. "What happens now?" he asked Zarathul as they left the trial chamber together. "Now we face the future together," she replied, her crown formations bright with joy and determination. "The hegemony threat is far from over, and there will be challenges ahead that will require both human ingenuity and Vethran wisdom." "Any regrets?" Marcus asked, echoing her question from weeks earlier. "None at all," Zarathul replied without hesitation. "You have brought something to our people that we didn't even know we were missing. The perspective of a species that sees problems as puzzles to be solved rather than obstacles to be endured." As they walked through the corridors of the Stellar Harmony, now officially recognized as equal partners in the leadership of the Vethran Dominion, Marcus realized that his journey from ship's doctor to alien royalty had taught him something fundamental about humanity's place in the galaxy. Humans weren't superior to other species. nor were they inferior. They were different, and that difference was valuable precisely because it allowed them to see solutions that others might miss. The galaxy was vast enough for countless different approaches to life and civilization, and the diversity of thought and perspective that came from interspecies cooperation might be the key to facing challenges that no single species could overcome alone. The hegemony threat still loomed, political challenges awaited, and the work of building lasting peace between species would require years of effort. But Marcus faced these challenges with confidence, knowing that he and Zarathul together could find solutions that neither could achieve alone. As he had told the trial judges, strength wasn't about accepting artificial limitations. It was about finding new ways to approach problems that seemed impossible. And if there was one thing humanity had always excelled at, it was refusing to accept that anything was truly impossible. The galaxy was about to learn just how creative humans could be when they were fighting not just for themselves, but for the entire future of interstellar civilization. Marcus Chun, royal consort and bridge between worlds, was ready to show them exactly what humanity could accomplish when given the chance to prove itself on the greatest stage of all.